In the Netherlands, there are a lot of monuments dedicated to the Second World War. The Netherlands was occupied for 5 years by Germany. However, during the First World War, the Netherlands was neutral. To what extent? Because neutrality came at a cost. What were the relations with the Germans and with Great Britain, France and Belgium? Because this monument is a Dutch World War I monument. It's called the Belgian monument because it's dedicated to the Belgian refugees that went to the Netherlands to find a safe haven away from war-torn Belgium. In this video, you're gonna learn about the Netherlands during World War I. So the Netherlands was neutral during World War I. Not much action here. Well, it was way more tense than you might expect, especially since at some point during the war, Dutch ships could be targeted by German submarines. Speaking of ships, the sponsor of today's video is World of Warships Legends. It is a massive multiplayer free-to-play console game for those who are fond of naval battles. In this game, you will have historically accurate ships. Scout and destroy your enemies with powerful warships. World of Warships Legends takes full advantage of the power and capabilities of home consoles. This game requires more than just reflexes, and players have to operate strategically to succeed. In comparison to fast-paced shooter games, this game is slower paced and provides more time for thoughtful decision making. You can jump straight into the action and enjoy intense battles. You can play from the comfort of your own home on a big screen via PS or Xbox. There are a variety of ships. You can go orange too by operating the ships Celebes, Kijkduin, Eendracht and Haarlem. There are 11 different nations to command. Newcomers to the game are given a welcome pack where players can get everything they need for a solid start. American Tier 3 premium battleship Arkansas, German Tier 3 cruiser Karlsruhe, 7 days of premium account, 5 common crates, 10 red, white and blue camouflages and 10 hunter camouflages. There's a new game mode called War Tales. This new PvE game mode offers story-driven scenarios. There are the tales of Frost Sword, Bleeding Heart and Chainbreaker. Whether you're a solo sailor or leading a squad, this update opens up epic new gameplay paths to put your skills to the test. In the description box you'll find a link. Go over there now and start your naval adventure today. After the Napoleonic Wars, the Netherlands became a kingdom as King William I was inaugurated in 1815 as King of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands that also included today's Belgium and Luxembourg. Over the course of the 19th century, the Netherlands were formed from a relatively poor agricultural and basic industrial nation into an economically modern nation. Belgium seceded from the Netherlands in 1830, a move that was officially acknowledged by the Dutch 9 years later. With the loss of Belgium, the country lacked financial reserves, trade had been poor, and the colonies did not produce huge profits yet. Dutch society was segregated in different classes: the upper class, the middle class, the working class, and the agricultural class. Around 1870, about 30% of the Dutch lived in pure poverty. It was only during the last decades of the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century the social standards were gradually improved. During the Franco-Prussian War 1870-1871, the Netherlands kept aside and maintained a strict neutral policy. For the Netherlands, this war did contribute to a revolution in industry and armament, as the steelworks and fabrication were boosted. When Germany united, the Netherlands found a much bigger neighbor. Its policy of neutrality was continued. Interestingly enough, unlike the Belgian neutrality, the Dutch neutrality wasn't guaranteed by a major power. The Dutch policy was best summed up by Minister of Foreign Affairs de Beaufort, who stated his country wanted to live in good friendship with all the great powers as much as possible, and not in too close contact with any of the great powers. The Dutch neutrality was tested around the turn of the century, when the Second Boer War broke out in South Africa. Many of the Boers descended from the Dutch. The war showed one of the main vulnerabilities of Dutch neutrality policy. The Netherlands realized that it could not make an independent fist against a European superpower in defending free trade, and was therefore dependent on the support of a neutral superpower. For the time being, the theoretical question of how to act if there were no neutral superpowers in a future European war was not yet considered. And that European war came in 1914. When war broke out, the Dutch government immediately reaffirmed its neutral status to the belligerents. But would that neutrality be respected? Dutch military planners had anticipated the Belgians would be invaded by the Germans and believed an all-out invasion of their country by their eastern neighbor was unlikely. Yet they did fear the Germans might cross through the southern province of Limburg in order to take on Belgium more quicker. How would the British react? Perhaps they would land at Zeeland. It never materialized, as the German armies moved around the Dutch border and remained in Belgium, although there are reports of German soldiers crossing into the Netherlands by accident. But this had no repercussions. Due to the threat of war, a general mobilization was announced for the Netherlands on July 31st, 1914. All soldiers had to report to their barracks on August 1st. The army consisted of the Field Army, the Landwehr, which guarded the border, coast, bridges and railways, among other things, and the Landsturm, some kind of militia. All in all, 200,000 people were drafted. Soldiers were quartered throughout the country. In Zeeland there was a division around Bergen op Zoom, a division on Walcheren, and there were soldiers along the border and the coast. After all, the Netherlands had to be able to defend itself, even in the event of a British attack. Most of the military had barely any experience. Perhaps some had fought in the colonial wars in the Dutch East Indies, for example in Aceh, but this type of conflict was way different than a European war. One person who had seen action in Aceh was the Dutch Supreme Commander of the Army and Navy, Cornelis Jacobus Snijders. Both Germany and Britain declared to respect Dutch neutrality. The Dutch army closed off the Scheldt. The German army respected the Dutch-Belgian land border in Limburg. When the fighting in Belgium took place, Snijders ordered the field army to concentrate more than half its strength in the southern provinces, just to fulfill its role as a deterrent force. Over the course of World War I, the Dutch uniform would change from blue to grey-green. On the 10th of October, the Belgian port city of Antwerp fell into German hands. Many people fled to the Netherlands. In total, 1 million Belgian civilians and soldiers fled to the Netherlands. According to war regulations, foreign soldiers were interned. As the war progressed, many refugees returned home. Eventually, about 80,000 Belgians spent the 4 years of war in the Netherlands. Many of the civilian refugees ended up in refugee towns, small purpose-built settlements with a post office, hospital and church, daycare centers, stores and even a reading room. Belgian soldiers who fled were disarmed and housed in internment camps. There were also camps for British and German soldiers. A number of 33,105 Belgian soldiers, 1,751 British, 1,461 Germans, 8 French and 4 Americans were interned by the Dutch. To stop illegal crossings, the Germans built an electric fence on the Dutch-Belgian border. With an electric wire fence of 2000 volts, the German occupiers closed off all this national border from mid-1915 to November 1918 in an attempt to shut down clandestine border traffic. People from the border region were not yet familiar with electricity. People did not know the danger. Some did test the wires manually, usually resulting in death. The Germans placed protective wires on both sides of the electric fence. They declared the border zone off limits and placed signs with words of warning. Priests warned the people about the dangers of the death wire. Teachers did the same in their classrooms. As to the number of victims the death wires claimed, estimates vary considerably among historians. At least several hundred casualties fell. The highest estimates run toward 3,000 dead. One Flemish historian claimed there must have been at least 850 victims. According to him, 50% of them were Belgium, 25% German and 10% Dutch. In addition, Russian prisoners of war died at the wires, 10%, and 4% of the victims had French nationality. Finally, several persons of other nationalities died at the death wires. 3/4 of the victims died from immediate electrocution, while the remainder died from shooting incidents near the electric wire fence. The youngest victim was a Dutch toddler, Peter Buys. He was only 4 years old. On Friday, September 8, 1916, he was horribly killed near the border post in Bergen Eik when he tried to crawl under the wire while playing. Despite Dutch territory being generally respected by the warring parties, Dutch waters and skies were often violated. Not only did the Dutch read about it in the papers, they could also see it with their own eyes as foreign aircraft and zeppelins crossed their airspace. In cinema, the war could be seen in more detail. The Dutch government made the movie Holland neutral. To show its population, the Dutch army was maintaining this neutrality. The Dutch public also went to the British movie about the Battle of the Somme that had occurred a year before. Never before the horrors of war could be seen in this detail. People concluded that it was for the better, that the Netherlands was neutral. During Easter in 1916, there was a short panic of an imminent British invasion of Zeeland. Leaves were cancelled and troops redirected. Eventually, it turned out to be false alarm, but for Snijders, it was a great opportunity to once again underline the necessity of such a great force at the ready. Unrestricted submarine warfare was declared by the Germans early 1917. The Germans hoped to force Britain to surrender. Also, ships from neutral countries could be targeted. Around 1,700 Dutch sailors died during World War I. The German policy backfired as the US got dragged into the war against Germany, also due to other reasons like the Zimmermann telegram. Dutch ships were already targeted, like in March 1916, the Tubantia. Not far from the coast of Zeeland, the ship was hit by a torpedo and sunk. It turned out a German submarine was responsible. Eventually, the Germans paid for the damage. The British, by accident, bombed cities in Zeeland. 14 times I read between April and December 1917. The British acknowledged this and paid reparations. This was because Zeeuws-Vlaanderen bordered occupied Belgium directly, and sometimes pilots couldn't see properly what was enemy territory, German-occupied Belgium, and what was neutral territory. Actually, during the war in 1916, German military planners did develop a plan to invade neutral Netherlands and Denmark. These countries would form good bases for the German Navy for their attacks on Britain. These plans were developed at the end of 1916 when the Germans got bogged down at Verdun. Once the Germans had defeated Romania in 1917, the plans further developed. Dutch Prime Minister Pieter Cort van der Linden used his secret contacts in Germany. For this, he also made use of Dutch businessman Anton Kruller, who had an extensive network in Germany. Silent diplomacy managed to keep things down, but the Germans nevertheless continued with their unrestricted submarine warfare. The different warring nations undertook acts of espionage on Dutch territory. Ironically, the successful spying practices did not harm Dutch interests at all, because the belligerents placed great value on the useful information they obtained in or through the Netherlands. It was all the more reason to maintain Dutch neutrality. See, Dutch citizens were sought after as spies because they could travel freely throughout Europe. Some spies were executed for espionage. Heike Janssen and Willem Roos, two unemployed Dutch sailors, were executed in 1915 by the British. Netherlands' most famous and perhaps partially for that reason incompetent spy was Margaretha Matahari Zelle. The German consul Kramer had visited her at home in The Hague in the spring of 1916. For the not inconsiderable sum of 20,000 French francs, she pledged her espionage services to him. But since Kramer's corridors were being investigated by British intelligence, Mata Hari was high on the British suspect list from the beginning of her espionage career. She ended up facing a French execution squad on October 15, 1917. Furthermore, a total of 7 Dutch citizens were executed by either the British, French, and Germans, and many more were imprisoned. There are many interesting facts regarding the Netherlands during the First World War. Did you know Dutch aircraft designer Anthony Fokker built 700 planes for the Germans at that time? There was also the Dutch cocaine factory, the Nederlandse cocaïnefabriek, that supplied cocaine to British, US and German soldiers. Although there was an export ban on medicines from the neutral Netherlands during World War I, the Dutch cocaine factory received an exemption for this. In the course of that war, the factory did face increasing dislocations as a result of combat operations, such as shortage of raw materials due to the unrestricted submarine warfare. And did you know Dutch Queen Wilhelmina was related to the German Kaiser? After Wilhelmina's father, William III, died when she was only 10 years old, Kaiser Wilhelm took care of his distant niece. Wilhelmina referred to him as Uncle Willie. During the war, Wilhelmina regularly visited and inspected mobilized troops in their barracks and forts. The subject of discussion is the position of the commander-in-chief, General Snijders. Snijders had repeatedly expressed himself pro-German and saw little point in defending the country against a possible German invasion. The government wanted to get rid of him, but Wilhelmina was a big fan of the general and supported him wherever she could. Was she pro-German? Wilhelmina admired military discipline and professionalism, something she also saw in the German army. However, this did not mean she supported Germany in the war. On November 10, 1918, German Kaiser Wilhelm II reported to the Dutch border post in IJsden. He was deposed the day before and was afraid of German revolutionaries. The Allies wanted to try him for war crimes too. Because the Netherlands was neutral during World War I, he applied for political asylum in that country. The Dutch government, as well as the Queen, were already aware of his arrival, and he was admitted. He would remain in the country until his passing in 1941. The war itself did not directly involve the small country in the northwest of Europe, but the conflict did have a devastating effect on the economy of the Netherlands, apart from the fact that the conscript army had to remain mobilized for the entire duration of the war, excluding many soldiers from regular work. The import and export came almost to a complete stop. In those days, the Netherlands was also depending on huge import of basic agriculture products for its daily meals, and as such, poverty and food shortages were common matters, especially in the last year of the war when the blockade of the Dutch merchant fleet was hard felt. Being neutral wasn't that easy after all, so it seemed. The Netherlands carried its policy of neutrality to the interwar period. Many Dutch believed their country would escape the ravages of war again when the Second World War broke out, but they were wrong. I actually made much content about the German invasion of the Netherlands in May 1940. I have 2 interesting videos for you right here. Thanks to the sponsor of this video, World of Warships Legends. And thank you, as always, for watching.